We sell clear ice for cocktails. We're producing over 100,000 pounds a week, and people love the clarity. It looks really impressive to someone who's never seen this ice before. If you're going to pay top dollar for a superior cocktail, then the frozen water that goes into that cocktail should be as important an ingredient as everything else that goes into it. We generally start work between 5 and 6 in the morning. Obviously, our product is perishable, so we need to protect our investment. We're spending a lot of time in sub-zero temperatures, and it's something that you have to be prepared for and something that you have to be accustomed to after time. So we like to keep things just below 32 in the production room. These are our ice block makers. Each machine will produce 2 300-pound blocks every 2 days. And today's the day when we are going to harvest our ice. We're harvesting 2 to 3 times a week. That gives you an idea of how much ice we're actually harvesting. So New York City tap water is actually regarded as some of the best in the country, if not the best for drinking, but we take measures to filter it extensively through a proprietary method. The ice cubes in your freezer at home are cloudy, and that is an example of oxygen bubbles at the core of that cube attempting to push their way out. And each chamber has a pump which circulates the water. This way, no oxygen bubbles or impurities have an opportunity to freeze in the block. So as the water is circulating and it's freezing from the bottom up, which is the opposite of what would happen in a lake or a pond, that would freeze from the top down. So this is mimicking but inverting that process. As a testament to how clear this ice is, although you might think that I'm looking at a bathtub full of water, I can't move my hand any further than that because the ice is right here. The last layer to achieve a frozen state will get vacuumed off, and the result will be a crystal clear 300-pound block. These are 300 pounds, so quite heavy, and this is quite possibly the most dangerous part of the process because you're dealing with a really heavy block suspended in midair. So we're taking the block that we just harvested, and then we're going to cut some slabs that we would then bring to our bandsaw. So this is just an electric chainsaw with a mill that we modified and customized so that we can get specific measurements of slabs. And you have to also account for the width of the blade. We try to achieve a minimal amount of waste. So this is the raw product from the block that we would then take and feed through the chainsaw. Throughout my career as a bartender, going back to Milk and Honey and Little Branch in the early aughts, ice was always a very important part of our cocktail program. We were responsible for freezing our own blocks of ice. So clarity wasn't necessarily the focus back then. It was more about size and shape and temperature. And then when Sasha and myself opened Dutch Kills, I learned that very close by to Dutch Kills was Okamoto Studio, who make ice as sculptors and certainly had a vast understanding and knowledge of frozen water that as bartenders we didn't necessarily possess. From learning and working with Takeo and Shintaro Okamoto, we were able to learn more about how the ice actually could be applied even better to our drinks. So now that we made our slabs off of the big block, we're going to take our slabs and trim them down. A lot of bars and restaurants will buy slabs in different sizes and they'll actually cut them down themselves behind the bar. This is Pedro Duran. He's our shop manager. He's been with us since day one in 2011. Pedro is the maestro. We're basically just gonna cut 2-inch cubes. This is probably one of our most popular cuts. Clear ice is a good indication that your ice is devoid of impurities and oxygen bubbles, but the two most important factors really are size and temperature. The big ice melts slower, stays colder longer, and does not impart unwanted water content to a cocktail. So we're gonna take these and cut our highball spears, which we use for long drinks, Collins, Bucks, and a lot of bars like to put these in their cocktails. This is another shape that we do. We have a common drill press that we have customized and modified in order to create our spheres. Spheres will actually melt slower in a cocktail than a cube based upon surface area and size. So that's how it looks when it comes out. So this is something that a lot of our clients will ask us for, is specialty ice. And we freeze things into our cubes. Golf balls, scorpions, flowers. We've done just about everything. Here we have Raimundo and Jorge. They're with us here on the assembly line, and they're cleaning up our cubes and making sure that everything looks nice before it goes out for delivery. We have lights below and we have lights above, and they can hold up the ice to the light and make sure that it is of top quality. These are the cubes that didn't quite make it. Something like that, or a chip on the other side. Any imperfection such as this would not make it to a client. It has to be perfect. So we'll use this scrap ice for stirring cocktails. We'll use it in cocktails that don't require perfect cuts of ice. So for a caipirinha, or we might use a very small piece to shake like a Collins or a Buck or a highball. So we try not to waste anything, and ultimately our goal is to recycle everything and be completely sustainable to the point where not a drop of water hits the floor of the shop. So we probably have, just in this room alone, roughly 20,000 pounds of ice today, but that number could change because on any given day, we may have to increase production. Ice in and of itself is not timeless. Once this ice goes to the bar, it becomes a very fragile element. We're delivering 10,000 pounds a day. We have to be very careful because it's a perishable material, and that must be very carefully regulated from the moment it leaves the freezer. Yeah, so each bag will indicate what we're delivering. So on average, we're delivering 10,000 cubes a day, 6 days a week. So our trucks are obviously climate-controlled, refrigerated freezer trucks. So every morning, our route gets planned out, and that's across all 5 boroughs. We're not just putting the ice in there randomly. We do it strategically, so we know that timing is always important because time and temperature are your 2 worst enemies. Today, we delivered to Attaboy, cut by Wolfgang Puck, St. Ambrose Lafayette, employees only, and the list goes on. We have to work with it very carefully and very respectfully so that when it gets to our clients, they can take it knowing that it's not going to last forever in the glass. I'm going to Dutch Kills in Long Island City. So this is what we call our 3x2s. We use these in like an old-fashioned at Dutch Kills. So this is one that we use quite a bit. We call these tall rocks, and we use these primarily for shaking cocktails. You can also use this for like a spirit on the rock in a sort of a smaller whiskey glass. And then these are our highball spears. So we would use this for any type of long drink or highball. fresh caught, farm to table, freezer to cocktail. So I primarily introduce myself to somebody in passing as a bartender because that's my trade. That's why I do this. We're bartenders, and this company was founded by bartenders for bartenders. So because now the big clear ice cube has become somewhat ubiquitous and almost de rigueur in cocktail bars that really care about their beverage program. This would be our shaking cube, and it will help us to aerate the cocktail while making it as cold as possible without worrying about the ice shaking or breaking inside the shaker. So when you shake with the big ice cube, you have the advantage of controlling and regulating temperature and water content, and you can strain to the last drop, and everyone will see that you are pouring a perfect cocktail and not leaving anything left over in the shaker. Ask your neighborhood bartender to show you what's left over. Here, you're getting every last penny from this cocktail. For this one, I'm gonna use the spear. These are the scraps that you saw. They don't go down the drain, they go into the cocktail. So. Clear ice is a good indication that your ice is devoid of impurities and oxygen bubbles, which can be detrimental to your cocktail. If you're shaking with ice that has lots of oxygen bubbles or striations, that ice is going to crack apart right away in your shaker and create unwanted water content for your cocktail. But if you have a very cold, dense piece of crystal clear ice, it gives you more liberty to shake longer and actually aerate your cocktail and bring it down to a colder temperature. So this is an ice sphere, which is going to melt slower than a traditional cube because of the surface area. We keep all our glassware frozen because we do anything possible to serve a colder cocktail. So whatever we can within our power, whatever we can do, we will do. So this is the old-fashioned at Dutch Kills. It's a three-prong ice pick. It's really great for everything that we do behind the bar. The importance of putting the ice in the cocktail at the right temperature, making sure that it comes out of the freezer and you temper it before it goes in the glass so that you don't get that pop. It's the old-fashioned. It's about as old-fashioned as they get. It is very cool to be able to come to work and take out the tools and work on something and just finding ways to solve problems that ultimately will make a better cocktail for somebody down the line. Even as a bartender, you have to have an eye for precision because it has to start from a raw product and it has to end up being something beautiful. In the end, this is a food item. We want to treat it with the same respect as anyone would for anything that they're presenting onto a plate or into a cocktail. The ultimate goal is to provide a superior cocktail no matter what.